jury has reached the verdict that Montressor is... Please rise. The Court of the 2nd Judicial Circuit, Criminal Division is now in session. The Honorable Judge, Lila Assaf, presiding. Everyone but the jury may be seated. At this time, I will swear in the jury. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will truly listen to this case and render a true and fair verdict as to this defendant?
I do.
You may be seated.
Thank you.
Members of the jury, your duty today will be to determine whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty based only on facts and evidence provided in this case. The prosecution has the burden of proving the guilt of the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. This burden remains on the prosecution throughout the trial. The prosecution must prove that a crime was committed and that the defendant is the person who committed the crime. However, if you are not satisfied of the defendant's guilt to that extent, then reasonable doubt exists and the defendant must be declared not guilty. Ms. Amani, what is today's case?
Your Honor, today's case is Fortunato and Montressor.
Is the prosecution ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Safiyyah and I will be representing Mr. Fortunato in this case. I intend to prove the guilt of the cursed Mr. Montressor. Using the evidence that will be provided, we will prove that Mr. Montressor isn't who he thinks he is and that he has secrets that he's hiding. The defense might try to prove otherwise, but with evidence, I can prove differently. My client was unjustly murdered and I wish to bring death to his justice, which means making sure Mr. Montressor gets the punishment that he deserves. Please take into consideration what is said and all evidence that is given. Thank you.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Milan Eludin, and I am representing Mr. Montressor in this case. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I intend to prove my client's innocence as he stands here today falsely accused of the first-degree murder of Mr. Fortunato. The defendant has been mistakenly identified as Mr. Fortunato's killer. However, I am here to prove otherwise. I assure you my client is not guilty. The prosecution will state only circumstantial evidence against my client, but I ask that you take into consideration the matter of this crime. I will bring justice to Mr. Montressor's supposed role in this case and provide reliable evidence to prove his innocence. Thank you.
Prosecution, you may call your first witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Eliona Rosie.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Miss Rosie, what is your relation to this case?
Well, I am a chef at the Mr. Montressor home. He hired me 2 years ago after he kept coming and asking for casseroles that I made, so he hired me.
Okay, why did you leave for the carnival like everyone else?
Well, I wasn't feeling good, so one of the close friends and neighbors, Alessandra, she's a nurse. She's a carer.
Okay. Did you see or hear anything strange while you were at the palazzo?
Well, I didn't hear anything. Well, I heard the door open, then Alessandra went downstairs, and then I smelled smoke from the vents. So when I checked it out, I seen Alessandra coming up crying, saying she just witnessed a murder.
Thank you.
The defense may cross-examine the witness.
Miss Rosie, you are the chef at the Montressor's residency, am I correct?
Yes.
Did you notice any suspicious behavior from Mr. Montressor the night of Mr. Fortunato's murder?
Well, as I said before, I wasn't exactly seeing any of them, so I was upstairs while Alessandra was taking care of me, and then she heard the door open. So she went downstairs to tell Mr. Montressor that all the servants left, and I stayed in the room, and then I smelled smoke coming from the vents, so I decided to go and check it out. So when I came downstairs, I seen her crying and saying that she just witnessed a murder, so she took me outside.
So why exactly was Miss Marino there if there was no servants in the house? Do you not think it's a bit strange for a neighbor to be in one's house if there was nobody to let her in, or if they didn't have the permission of the homeowner?
Well, I kind of asked her to come over so she could take care of me since she is a nurse, and Mr. Montressor said it was okay.
But you just stated before that Alessandra went and told Mr. Montressor that there were no servants in the house. So, do you not see a problem there? How reliable do you believe Miss Razi to be? And do you think it's possible that there was a communication misconception between the two of you as you were sick and a bit delusional according to your medical records?
Possibly.
Thank you.
Prosecution, you may call your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Bruno Romano.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Romano, what is your relation to this case?
My name is Bruno Romano. I am 32 years old, and I am a vendor at the carnival selling popcorn and wine. Because I'm not a rich man, I have to make money for my family.
Okay. Where were you the night of Fortunato's death?
I was at the carnival tending to my stall.
Did you see or hear anything strange? If so, what did you see or hear?
Yes, I did. I saw Fortunato in a jester's costume having a conversation with Montressor. As they passed my stall, I heard Montressor talking to him about getting the drink called Amontillado, and that he wasn't sure if it was the real thing.
Did you hear anything else?
No. But Montressor said that he was going to meet this other guy named Lucrezi, and that Fortunato didn't need to come because of his cold. But Fortunato insisted that the next thing they were off to Montressor's palazzo.
So basically, Fortunato was tell Montressor that he wanted to go to his house?
Yes, to check if the Amontillado was real or not.
Okay. Was there anything else?
No, that was all that happened.
Okay. Thank you.
The defense may cross-examine the witness.
Mr. Romano, why do you think it was suspicious for Mr. Montressor and Mr. Fortunato to be hanging out together? From my understanding, they were pretty good friends.
I don't think it was suspicious that they were hanging out together and talking, but it was a weird case of what they were talking about.
You claim that they were talking about wine, specifically Amontillado. Why is it weird they're talking about the wine if that's something that they're both known for, their interest in alcohol?
Well, maybe to check it and see if it's real or not, to gain fame and to show that they're good at it.
Are you aware of any motives that Mr. Montressor had to kill Mr. Fortunato? If so, how would you know these motives, being that you were just a carnival vendor and had no relation to the defendant or the victim?
I'm not aware of any motives.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Prosecution, you may call your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Mrs. Marino.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
How long have you known Miss Razi, and how did you guys meet?
I've been working for Mr. Montressor for around 10 years, and he hired her a couple years ago, so I've known her around 2 years. We met when I was taking care of one of the other servants, and I thought I'd go get some soup, and she made it for me.
Okay. When you were at Mr. Montressor's house looking after the cook, did anything happen?
When I was taking care of her, I heard a noise. We heard a noise in the front, so someone had entered the house. We went downstairs to go check who it was, and Mr. Montressor and one of his business partners were walked in the house.
Okay. Did it look like Mr. Montressor and his business partner were fighting?
Not that I could see, because they were walking really fast into the basement.
Okay. Did Mr. Montressor's acquaintance look drugged in any way?
He was stumbling a bit and was mumbling incoherent words, but other than that, no.
Okay. Miss Razi said you witnessed a murder. Is that true?
She must have misunderstood what I was trying to say. What I said was, I heard screaming from the vaults.
Okay. Thank you.
The defense may cross-examine the witness.
Ms. Marino, you claim that you were the nurse at the Montressor residency?
Yes.
Why did you lie to Mr. Fortunato about no servants being in the house at the time of his arrival?
I didn't even talk to Mr. Montressor that night.
but Miss Razi claimed that you told him that there were no servants in the house at the time, so you have two different stories here.
Miss Razi wasn't in her complete mind at the time, so she must have been seeing things or misunderstanding. So it might have been a bit hazy for her.
So she says that you told her that you witnessed a murder, Mr. Montressor murdering his business acquaintance. Do you know anything about that?
No, when I meant to go talk to Mr. Montressor, he seemed in a rush, so I didn't talk to him. All I heard when I was on my way back up was screaming, so...
And so she misunderstood what you were saying her. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Miss Veneto, Fortunato's daughter.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Miss Veneto, what is your relation to this case?
I am a 14-year-old and I'm the daughter of my poor father that went missing the night of the carnival. He wouldn't let me go to the carnival and he didn't come back even though he never breaks promises and told me he'd be back at 9 o'clock. But he wasn't.
Thank you.
Where were you the night of your father's death?
I was at home. But my father, he wouldn't let me go to the carnival. So I stayed at home and watched Italian Netflix.
Why didn't your father let you go to the carnival with him?
He said I'd be tempted to drink. And I wouldn't, but I promised I wouldn't, but he said I would, so I just stayed and watched Italian Netflix.
Okay, was there any grudge between your father and Mr. Montressor?
My father, he always used to tease him. He constantly teased him, but they was meant as a joke, and I never thought nobody took it seriously. That's only maybe, I don't know, I can't.
Okay, thank you.
Simona Veneto, you, for the record, you're the victim's daughter.
Yes.
What leads you to believe that the defendant is guilty of murdering your father?
Well,
Objection, Your Honor. On the grounds that the questions asked by Miss Eludin is irrelevant, Miss Veneto is only 14 years old, so she might not know of such wars and
he's
hate
my
going
father.
on between Mr. Fortunato and Mr. Montressor.
Overruled. I'd like to hear what the witness has to say.
Denied.
He's my father. My father, he always teased Montressor, but they were friends. They never meant to take it seriously. Nobody took it seriously. I don't know what to do at this point. My father.
Has Mr. Montressor ever shown any signs of hate or aggression to your father or towards anyone in relation with your father? If so, how?
He never, ever done something like that. My father teased him, but nobody took it seriously. Montressor laughed and they would joke about it. It was never serious.
So why do you believe that he killed your father if he never took it seriously?
Well, I believe he killed my father because from all the witnesses I heard that, I don't know. He was last seen with my father.
He was last seen with your father, but don't you think it's possible that he could have met with somebody else or died on his own terms?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't.
Thank you for taking the time to answer my questions. It's okay.
Defense, you may call your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Mr. Montressor.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Sir, what is your relation to this case?
Well, I am 47 years old, and I'm a very good friend of Mr. Fortunato, and I was falsely accused of murdering my dear friend.
Okay. What were you doing the night of Mr. Fortunato's murder?
I was at the carnival partying with some other friends.
Okay. Are you aware of anything that might have caused Mr. Fortunato's death?
Yes, he was very sick and coughing a lot, and he was drinking a lot also. I was telling him not to, and he entered the catacombs where the nitrate got his disease even worse.
Did you warn him about entering the catacombs prior
Yes, many
to
times.
him
I said,
entering it?
I told him I could go to Lucrezi instead, but he insisted not to.
Okay, thank you.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine the witness.
Mr. Montressor, what were you doing with Fortunato at the carnival?
I was greeting my little friend with a drink.
Why did you take him to your house, down to the catacombs?
I exclaimed to him that I had a very nice wine. So I took him to my house because it was at my house at the catacombs.
But according to shipping records over here, it shows that no wine was shipped in, or any drink, in fact, in the past month, and no drink called Amontillado was ever shipped in.
Well, you see, I'm a very good person in wine. And I own many industries across the world. And one of my industries made this lovely wine 2 weeks ago.
Again, according to these records, no wine was ever shipped in, and none called Amontillado.
Like I said, I own many industries. And one of those industries gave it to a person, and that person gave it to me as a gift.
But you just said your companies made the Amontillado.
No.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. As you can see, Your Honor, Mr. Montressor here lied about his dealings with the wine. First he said his company made it, now he's saying he ordered it. So how do we know he's not lying about Mr. Fortunato's death too?
No. Fortunato was my dearest friend. I would never kill my best friend.
Some people do things naturally, I guess. Things happen.
But those people are not me.
We don't know that. It could be you.
You don't know that either.
Defense, you may call your witness.
Your Honor, I call to the stand Lorenzo Colombo.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Colombo, what is your relation to this case?
My name is Lorenzo Colombo. I am a performer. My stage name is Mercedes, and I was working at the night of Mr. Fortunato's death.
What did you witness the night of Mr. Fortunato's murder? Any suspicious behavior from Mr. Montressor?
I did not recognize any suspicious behavior from Mr. Montressor. In fact, Mr. Fortunato was the one acting weird. As many of us know, he's an alcoholic. But he was acting a bit weird prior to meeting Mr. Montressor. He was acting extremely sluggish when entering the carnival. Mr. Montressor was acting normal, hanging with multiple friends and drinking sherry.
Did anything stand out to you that led you to believe that Mr. Montressor is innocent?
Yes, I overheard Mr. Montressor and Mr. Fortunato conversations. Mr. Montressor was talking about an expensive alcohol he had received as a gift, and Mr. Fortunato was coughing up a storm, barely able to speak a sentence without coughing. I don't think Mr. Montressor was the murderer of Mr. Fortunato. From what I understand, Mr. Fortunato died of an illness.
Thank you, Mr. Colombo, for taking the time to answer these questions.
You're welcome.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine the witness.
How was Mr. Fortunato acting weird?
He was coughing a lot, a bit too much even for him.
What? Maybe he had a cold.
I doubt a cold would make him cough that much.
Okay. Were Mr. Montressor and Mr. Fortunato, did they seem to have like a fight between them?
No, they looked pretty friendly with each other. They were just making their jokes and whatnot.
Did you see Mr. Montressor leave with Mr. Fortunato?
Yes, I did.
And were Mr. Fortunato and Mr. Montressor at your show?
I don't pay attention to the crowd, but I just know there's a crowd.
But then, if you don't pay attention to the crowd, how do you know that Mr. Montressor and Mr. Fortunato were there?
I saw them after the show.
Okay, thank you.
Defense, you may call your witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. I call to the stand Antonio Cuevo.
Will the witness please stand to be sworn in by the jury?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Cuevo, what is your relation to this case?
Well, I'm a firefighter. My name is Antonio Cuevo. I'm 30 years old. And at Mr. Montressor's home, I went to see what was in their cellar, and I saw a huge fire.
So you're a firefighter who went to the Montressor residency when the fire occurred?
Yes.
Okay, and who did you see at the Montressor household at the time of the fire?
I just saw Mr. Montressor, Alessandro Marino, and Leonora Rossi.
So Mr. Fortunato was nowhere to be seen?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you discover to be the cause of the fire?
Torch fell on the floor and it began to spread really quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Quavo.
Prosecution, you may cross-examine the witness.
What time do you believe the fire occurred?
Around 11:30.
And how big do you estimate the fire to be?
It was really big. It was blazing. It was like it was hell in a hallway.
Did Mr. Montressor seem satisfied or happy at the time?
No, he had a straight face. He kept it cool the whole night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the jury, today you have heard testimony regarding how Mr. Montressor's alleged role in this heinous crime is doubtful. I would like to remind you of some of the important information that you should consider before you begin your deliberations. This includes how there was a perfectly reasonable explanation on how Mr. Fortunato died without the involvement of Mr. Montressor, the fact that much of the information presented by the prosecution was circumstantial, and that there was no solid evidence connecting Mr. Montressor to this crime, such as a murder weapon. Now that you've heard all of the relevant information, the only conclusion that you can come to is that Mr. Montressor is innocent. Please remember the testimony of Mr. Montressor that proves to you beyond reasonable doubt that the defendant is in fact not guilty of first-degree murder of Mr. Fortunato. Thank you.
With all the given evidence, it is clear to see that Mr. Montressor is guilty and is the one to have killed my client, Mr. Fortunato. He was lured in with the promise of a rare drink, but instead had his life taken away. All evidence given points to Mr. Montressor being the criminal. This includes the fact that he was last seen with Mr. Fortunato at his house. He lied about the drink Amontillado, and he may have been the one to cause the fire to set a false alarm. I hope you see this too and bring justice to my client. Thank you for your patience.
Based on the analysis of the evidence provided by the prosecution attorney, I strongly believe that Mr. Montressor is guilty of manslaughter and should be given the maximum sentence of life in jail. All the witness statements seem correct beyond reasonable doubt. What do you think?
Mr. Latif, please state the facts that prove Mr. Montressor is guilty.
As you can see here on my very detailed notes, all of the evidence and all of the witness statements pointed to being Mr. Montressor. What do you have to say?
Montressor did not kill Fortunato. There is all this evidence, or these things you call evidence, but it's nothing Montressor has ever seen before.
Mr. Montressor is just one man. There are so many people who say it was him. Majority rules.
We have witnesses too. They all said that Montressor was not involved in the murder of Fortunato. How is it majority rules if we have the same amount of witnesses?
And you want to know a little secret?
Sure.
Me and Montressor, we have I hate that guy. I hate that guy. We haven't been on the best terms lately, so let's just put him in prison so he can learn his lesson. Ha ha ha, that's a genius plan.
Just because you hate the poor man, it doesn't mean you have the right to throw him in prison.
Did he try to sell you fake Chateau Latif 1865 just last week?
Yes, he did, but that doesn't...
That resonates
That
jail!
doesn't determine if he goes to jail or not.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
Listen. That's all I can say. Do you want to agree with me or no?
Yeah, just get on with it.
Okay. We believe that Mr. Montressor is guilty of all charges being laid against him without a reasonable doubt. He should be sentenced to life in prison for the manslaughter of Mr. Fortunato, without the chance of parole. According to Section 17, Act 101 of the Italian law that states, if a man inflicts harm upon another or causes death upon him, he shall receive the maximum punishment without the chance of parole. I will now request the Honorable Lila Assaf to make the final sentence. Thank you.
The jury has deliberated and reached a verdict in the case of Fortunato versus Montressor.
Excuse me, sir, the court is in session. Sir, court is in session, sir.
I, Fortunato.
Fortunato, I thought you were dead. Didn't Montressor kill you?
No. You got it all wrong. So basically, I knew he was trying to kill me. That's why I sent one of my servants. He looked like me. I knew that one day someone was trying to kill me because, as you guys know, I'm a rich man and people want my fame.
I've got this case upside down. So we have to change the verdict now. It can't be Montressor is guilty for killing Fortunato. What do you think?
Yes, I agree. Montressor is not guilty.
But Montressor should still be going to jail because he did kill somebody in the end. You agree?
I have to agree. But Montressor did not kill the person we are looking for.
But Montressor still did commit manslaughter. According to the Italian law, Section 17, Act 101, if a man inflicts harm upon another or causes death upon him, he shall receive the maximum sentence of life in prison.
I agree.
Okay, let's send it over to the honorable judge to his final sentence. Thank you.
The jury has reached the verdict that Montressor is guilty of manslaughter. He has no chance for parole and will be sent to prison for murdering Fortunato's servant. Thank you, jury, for your service today. Court adjourned.
Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart?
And now I look forward to every day. Welcome to my sunny day. Block don't stop, always stayed hot. No matter how the seasons got, I still remember.